Did you know that 85% of your engine wear occurs at startup? Yes, that is correct, and this is where Lower the Friction comes in by putting a protective, lubricating barrier on all moving parts. This now gives you full-time protection to make your engine last longer, run smoother, give you better performance, and improved fuel economy. People across the country are reporting some very exciting results. Go to lowerthefriction.com, place your order, and enter in promo code SOS to get 5% off of your order. That's lowerthefriction.com. Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the weekly Secrets of Saturn live stream. I am Jason Lindgren, your host. Joining me this week are Wayne McCroy and the Great Baldini, and I have a special guest hanging out at my house for a little while. If he can make it into the camera, this is Steve. Everybody say hi.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Steve.
Steve is the producer for Freeman Fly, and he's on his way on a trip to Texas, and he stopped by to say hello. So he's welcome to hang out as long as he likes.
I heard he's pretty fly.
Yeah, why don't we talk about that for a second, Steve? Why don't you move over, Steve, and you can talk a little bit about who you are, what you do. Tell us about Freeman, since that's your main guy. And
well, yeah, I've
got enough room there. There we go.
That's good. Yeah, I've been producing for Freeman for about 5 years now, finding the guests and lining them all up, and then he does the rest. So I live in Orlando, and I also work a little bit with Robert Phoenix. He does a few shows, 15 Minutes of Flame, Friday Farcast, and then he has a Sunday night show that he does too. But last year he had the Harvest Moon Gathering, and he's doing it again this year. It's in the hill country of Texas in Kerrville, and so it's just 3 days of gathering, and Masaki Miyagawa will be there, Emily Moyer. We have some other people, Hope Easton from LA, she's a musician, and I believe her name is Lee Guest. She'll be there Sunday. So it's just, like the gatherings that we all like to go to, and just getting together and having a little camaraderie and talking shop and just having a good time. Yep. And you're also going to be coming to see us at the Flattoberfest October 24th. That's right. So Will Freeman. So that's going to be a little gathering in, what's the name of the town? Greenville, South Carolina. Yeah. And I'll be putting on a presentation, The Social Engineering of Manned Spaceflight. I've already got it.
I'll be making coffee.
You'll be making coffee?
Yeah.
You're going to be making me coffee?
I'll make you coffee. I won't make you into coffee, but I'll make coffee for you. Yes.
Good thing you clarified there.
Yeah, let's be very specific.
We were all worried for a minute.
Yeah, Jason just made me some good Ethiopian coffee. Very nice.
We got to get him all powered back up so he can make the final leg of his journey here.
It is methamphetamines. We do that. So.
None of the leftover stuff.
Yeah. No, there's sometimes leftover coffee, but there's never leftover cocaine.
Crow's not with us tonight, though.
He
didn't have any leftover cocaine. He crashed out.
Yeah.
We should probably stop talking about that before somebody gets the wrong idea.
Yeah, right?
It's just a joke, folks. We don't do coke.
Drugs are bad, okay?
Kids, don't do drugs.
So anyway, let's just get that out of the way. Definitely, if you can make it, come to Flattoberfest. As everybody knows, I'm a very objective individual. I look at things right down the middle. So my presentation is not going to try and convince you of the nature of reality. It's more to talk about my favorite subject, which is social engineering and how things are done in our society to convince you of a certain way of things. My favorite target, of course, is Mr. Edward L. Bernays, who really wrote the book for the most of this stuff. And oh my God, that man really nailed it starting in the 1920s.
Yes, he did. And boy, he was a prolific writer, too. I just found some more, actually, of his documents and his books and stuff he wrote that I was unaware even existed. So I'll have to share those with you later. You may already have them, though. I mean, I know you dug in deep on Bernays.
Yeah, we've done 2 episodes on him. The second one, I really went in much deeper than I did the first time. I just didn't realize at first just how much damage that guy did, and everybody from that point. Because you got to think about it, society was a little more naive when you're talking about all the way back 20s, 30s, even the 40s. Things just were different then, and he picked up on that. Very, very smart man. Very well read. Took his Uncle Sigmund Freud, took his work and reapplied it towards essentially propaganda. But since that started having a negative connotation, he rebranded it as public relations, and everyone was off to the races because even NASA has a public relations department, don't they?
Indeed, so does the CDC, and according to their public relations, it's necessary to wear a mask.
I disagree.
It doesn't matter. I mean, that's what their marketing department's pushing. So there you go. Edward Bernays, he was the father of marketing, father of public relations, all of that stuff. So he's one of the key social engineers that there ever was.
Even public relations began to take on a negative connotation such that now government agencies are prohibited from having a public relations employment. They now call it a public information officer. So.
And that's interesting to know, because if you let government officials go and, do their own thing, they'll wind up with 2 old men on stage shouting at each other on national television.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. That was a shit show. Yeah.
That was
that later.
I watched very little of that, and I was just like, huh. My takeaway from it was that it seemed like Trump just wanted to beat down the old man who really just isn't in his right state of mind anymore. I mean, he seems like he's got some senility going on there, sad to say, even though he's kind of a prick.
Something.
And I think the Donald just hit him until he couldn't take anymore, and then he just was like, okay, I'm done now.
I think I'm about to, not to sidetrack things, but I think I'm about to start a campaign, #abstain, for those who, unlike most of us in this community, realize it's just all, it's puppetry. It's a puppet show.
It is, absolutely.
In, WWE wrestling in different suits. But for those who are out there in the, quote, normie world, the wool-wearing folks, just kind of want to throw out the idea of abstaining. It's like, do you the only reason people are voting for Biden is because they hate Trump, and the only reason people are voting for Trump is because they don't want the left to have the influence. So they're voting against rather than for. And this is, again, evidence that they're just saying this is all you get to choose from. This is the best that we can offer. And if people just said, no, we abstain, we're not going to consent to that. That's bullshit. I'm hoping that a few people might get it. I doubt it, because most of them are true believers. But I think I can make some compelling arguments that what they're voting for is not what they would want. They're simply voting against someone else.
Well, I'll tell you, I always like what Jordan Maxwell said. You might get to elect, but you don't get to select. But when it comes to the presidency, that's just a popularity contest, because as you'll hear me say over and over and over again, you don't vote for the president, folks. The Electoral College does. So watch the clown show as much as you like. It doesn't freaking matter.
It has seemed to me for many years that the primary political platform of both parties is simply to prove the other unfit to hold office. And in that one respect, they're both remarkably accurate.
Well,
this is true.
Is there anything else we want to talk about while you're here, Steve? You're welcome to contribute before we're going to go over a document, but while you're here visiting, I want to make sure you can get a few points in here.
Yeah. Well, as far as the mainstream media, at this point, and with the false flags that we've seen in the past, at this point they can make anything seem like anything. So I don't know how it can change anyway. And not change, but they can keep making it be whatever they want it to be.
Right.
And well, that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Right. Well, as we've talked about so many times, since they control things from the top down, like 5 or 6 corporations are just pushing out the orders. Like, okay, this is the commandment today.
Right.
Put this out, and then it trickles down through the pyramid, and everybody gets to it. And as Crow and I have demonstrated, these big organizations, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, PR Newswire and Business Wire and all them, they make the prepackaged things in this digital age where everything just goes out to the individual news stations and it gets read in the local flavors. So
exactly. Yep.
If you're in Mississippi, you get Hee Haw. If you're in Seattle, you get the Great Baldini.
Oh dear.
Well, one thing.
Oh my.
I think one thing that's changed too is, you were talking about Bernays and propaganda in the past. People were more trusting of the government, the belief in authority. But now, especially after 9/11 and everything that we've seen, there's more people at least knowing that there's something not quite right. They're questioning.
Yeah. Well,
I would submit that no one is less free than whoever sits in that office. They're beholden to everyone, and at a very high level and with high risks. So I think they're probably one of the least powerful people instead of the most powerful.
You got to wonder, like, what kind of phone calls do they get on a regular basis?
Yeah.
It's got to be pretty interesting stuff that they get the phone calls about, because what you really need to understand, anybody in that position, president of the United States, prime minister of England, or whatever this major office is, they really, first of all, don't hold any real power. They're just a figurehead. It's a position they're put in, and they go there willfully of their own free will as the willing scapegoat. See, they're there just to deflect all of the people's anger and all their different animosity towards government onto this one figure. So that's what it's for. They're the scapegoat. That's what they're up there. It's a really kind of a metaphysical type of a concept, but that's what it's for. So Trump has done a bang-up job of being the scapegoat here, more so than other presidents I've seen in the past.
I contend that was his entire role. That's exactly the role that he's playing. That the media is playing the part of the and the left is playing the part of controllers, and then they position the right as anything that they don't want, and then make a buffoon out of it. So they turn it into a proxy punching bag or a pinata. And so Trump is designed to represent anything that is anti. So Trump represents the buffoon. The left represents the educated, intelligentsia. And this is where we want to go. And anything other than that is hogwash and trailer trash. So that's how they position it. So anything right of hard left is considered, right wing Nazi, white supremacist. That's how they've put it together. So Trump has played this role from the very beginning. At first, I was surprised that they put him in rather than HRC, and then it became very clear right away that he was going to be that proxy punching bag, and they were going to just conflate everything. Again, you see it all the time. Oh, you're a Trump supporter. You're right wing. Hate group KKK. It's nonsense. But that's how they're positioning it. To again, it's a false equivalency and an easy straw man to burn down.
Well, let's just talk about the divide and conquer that has gone on just since Donald Trump has become president. I mean, there's always been a right versus left, blue versus red kind of nonsense going on, but never have I seen to the level.
The polarization, yeah.
I mean, to the point that literally people hate Donald Trump just because. And they can't even give me reasons most of the time. They hate
TDS is a real thing, but it's driven entirely by the media, and I see it clearly. Again, every day when the media comes out with something just like the tax returns, I knew that 10 people on social media that I know who would immediately be the first on it, and they pile on, and they're crazy. I mean, I gotta say, it's just and what they just repeat the talking points, regurgitate them, spit them out, and I just I was thinking about it earlier today. It's like, how much does any of that affect? I mean, I'm 50, almost 54, and the presidential politics literally has not affected me maybe 3 times in my entire life. Other than again, when you believe in it, right? Then you get upset about it, or you have thoughts and opinions about it. Now people are crazy about it, like literally crying, screaming, going on fits, hating other people, losing family members, disowning people over their politics when it has nothing to do with them, and those people wouldn't take a steaming dump on you. You know, they don't care about anything.
They will take some tax write-off off you, though.
Exactly, they're all on the same team, right? I mean, we all know this. I'm preaching to the choir, I'm sure. But again, if we just ignored that, that's my whole kind of point with the abstain thing, is take care of your life and you around you. Other than local politics, which is probably the only place they count the votes, abstain from it. Otherwise, you're consenting to whatever they give you. And it's been proven over and over again in the last 150 years. Almost every move from the federal government has been diametrically opposed from the will of the people in every case. So you know, clearly they're not doing anything for us. They just keep making promise after promise. I mean, we all know this is nonsense political bullshit, but people get really tied up in it, right? So it's more than just their favorite sports ball team, right? And you see people cry or have, get excited or have riots in cities when their team wins or loses. Again, it's just an emotional
My team,
construct.
Us, we won.
Exactly, we. And so again,
did
it just be. Exactly. And what's more is that and the polarization has become so tight that you're not allowed to have any diverting opinion whatsoever. So that you can't be, for example, on the left and have any thoughts about Harris and her position on, law enforcement or crime and punishment or, prisons, for-profit prisons. You can't have an opinion on that. You can't have a dissenting opinion on abortion or even the right to bear arms. You're not allowed to have any opinion that doesn't follow that line, or you get kicked out. And so they have to stay in. It's very cult-like. It's very much like what I observed in the, again, not to step on anybody's thing, but what I observed in Salt Lake City when I lived there is with the Mormon religion, people who lose everything, their family, their job. They're completely become outcast and a pariah in their community. And it's the same way with this politics now. You cannot have a dissenting opinion or you get the boot. And people cannot have a logical, calm, detached conversation about really anything, or it just becomes, hatred. They start there now. Nazi. It's
all
phenomenal
about the
to watch,
emotions.
really.
All about the emotions with all of it.
Well, those are emotion words. It's just
right.
Like what hot button can I hit to get someone triggered, basically. But here's the thing, before we get off
Rose
this.
and I, go ahead.
The divide and conquer is so good at this point. Like, this is what's happened just in the past few years. They've gotten so good, and the mainstream media has done so much damage that they've literally tried to convince people that racism and sexism is an issue in 2020 like it's 1955.
Oh yeah, they're acting like the KKK is around every corner.
Well, that they act like every white male is not only a card-carrying member of the Ku Klux Klan, but they're also massive against
misogynists
women of every...
and rapists and exactly,
misogynists beyond
toxic
all belief.
Masculinity.
They want the boot on every woman. They should be in the kitchen, and they should not have free thought or shouldn't even vote. Like this is ridiculous. It's 2020, folks, and the mainstream media is trying to convince you that these things that were resolved decades and decades ago are current issues. And if you just take a poll of the people around you, you realize nobody feels that way. And the very, very minor few that are, like, you still will find the occasional racist, and they're usually 90. So what? So they're an ignoramus. Those people are going to die off, and that's the end of it. Most people do not give a flip what your religion is, what color you are, what sex you are, if you happen to be a member of LGBTQ. Like, nobody cares about any of that stuff. Nobody freaking cares.
For the most part, yeah. Other than you have to consent to it and support it. So again, if I don't go out and march in support of it, then you hate it. No,
but that's bringing it. That's the tactic to keep making it like it's an issue.
Exactly.
It's not an issue if you don't have to bring up, like, this will be the first black female astronaut. Okay, how about she's just the next astronaut? Like, come on.
And they've made cisgender males, right, a bad thing. So if you're a straight male, you are the worst thing around. And again, that's those are the first people who usually are going to come protect you and fight for your liberties. So again, it does seem like they're just trying to break down not only masculinity but femininity as well by with again feminism. Right. Well, we all believe in women, but the idea that women are supposed to behave like men—that's not healthy for anybody. They should behave like women because women are awesome, right?
Women should be women. Period.
I love women.
Women should be women. Men should be men.
Yes.
And that's the whole universal balance: the black, the white, like all these things. I don't think I need to spell this out for people.
Exactly.
That two people who are good for each other, it works because they are different. Jason sounds like a boomer. Well, I'm not that old. Sorry.
Okay, boomer.
All right,
we're the same age.
Get off my lawn.
Man, it's what you need to understand about all that though is all these things, the whole gender differences and stuff like that. That's all on the chopping block right now because it's all part of the transhumanist agenda, and that's kind of what we're talking about tonight. That's what this paper that we're going to read is about.
Well, as I've said so many times, how many times do the transhumanists kind of seem to be pushing towards the fact that it's not going to be male or female or anything, it's going to be humanity plus, but even after that, it's going to be, we're just a bunch of its. We're going to be part of the Internet of Things, the Internet of Bodies. All these things are going to be integrated, intertwined, and communicating with a digital network that you can't get out of if you want to.
Resistance.
Precisely.
You will be assimilated.
Got anything to say on that, Steve, before we move on?
Yeah, I've been saying. You remember Matrix when Neo woke up in his energy pod?
Yep.
That's where we're going.
Isn't that scary?
Well, that's where they want us to go.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. Yeah, and like you said, when you look out in society, it's not reflective of what you see on in the media.
Not at all.
No, and everybody's cool, but they've got a plan and they're following the agenda. And they're treating us like how they think of us, and like we were talking earlier, people are settling for scraps from the table.
Yep, there you go.
And we have the potential to be spiritual butterflies, and so we need to stick to basics, get the basics right, get our foundation, and each one of us has our God-given gifts that we need to build and realize and feed back into the community. So just like some people say, we need to outgrow the government. Well, humanity needs to stop believing in authority or false authority and grow up, take responsibility, and just get in there and do what we're supposed to be doing, and we are doing it. It's like Edison and the light bulb. However many times it took him to get it right, if he did. But you never know how close you are. We have to keep doing what we're doing and pushing, and we're still in the middle of a fight, but we're getting there. We're getting there. I have. Freeman's got a good message. He has faith in humanity, and so we're close. We're close. We just have to keep working.
Is there anything you want to say about Freeman, by the way, before we move on to actually start working on the document we're on tonight? You're welcome to talk about anything he's got coming up. Because if anyone didn't understand, Steve does all the production for him, so he books his guests. He basically gets the show ball rolling to get that all going, and he is Freeman's Rose, because that's what she does for Crow and myself.
Right, exactly. I love Freeman. I've known him since 2014. And he's great. He's going to be there at Flattoberfest, and we'll be hanging out there. And so he's really excited to see everybody, and
Oh, I didn't even plug it. I just did a show with him. James True, Karen B, and myself.
Oh, that's right.
Did that? I completely forgot we did that.
That
was just a couple days ago.
Yeah.
That just got released last Saturday. So it was a week ago.
Yeah, FreemanTV.com.
Yeah, and that was great. Now I know Freeman isn't super into flat Earth, but he's curious about the phenomenon because, as we were talking about in my house a little while ago, that this is like something that's really building and building and building. And again, I'm not like the most dedicated flat Earth person. I just see a whole bunch of things wrong that I want answers to. So I approach it from that standpoint. But there are a lot of people who are very convinced that there is direct evidence that the place we live is not as described. That's even how Crow says it. He says the Earth is misdescribed, or the place we live is misdescribed. And there's a very good possibility that's true. I don't know. I would love to have more evidence to seal it in my mind. But Freeman's getting curious about it because he's seeing the same thing that of course, I saw over the past few years. And that what would you call it, that genre of the truth movement is growing very, very, very quickly.
Yeah. At least gives us a foothold. I mean, we know that we're being lied to, but that's, it's nice that community is growing. And, I who knows? I don't know if it is or not, but it's great information, and I'm looking forward to hearing you and the other presenters. What was I going to say? I lost it.
Well, as far as what I'm going to contribute to the presentation, mine is going to be showing how early on, actually in the 20th century especially, that the concept of manned spaceflight was being injected in a huge way, long before anything was supposedly going on, into general Western culture. And I am even surprised with how much I found. Like, I knew there was stuff out there, but I'm talking about, like, man, they really got on this early. Like, shortly after the whole Operation Paperclip, Werner von Braun, they got all the V-2 rockets, they got all that over there. They started plugging that stuff into people, that rockets, space, like all that was going on. And I hope everybody's going to enjoy it, because you're going to see just how much, well, I don't know if would you call it propaganda? I mean, it's social engineering. Their program, whether it's true or not, they went way out of their way for a very long time to put it in your head that manned space travel is a thing.
Yeah. It's not even just about with the NASA and the space stuff. You go back and listen to or watch any of the old TV shows or anything, and now you can see it, the predictive programming and everything. And I'm starting to think that, I don't know if it started with John Dee or how far back exactly, but I think this whole thing has been planned out, from start to finish a long time ago.
I think that's true. I think, from what I've noticed, that around the 1800s, like later 1800s, is when they really started figuring out what was going to happen in the next century-ish. And like the world wars and all that. And I think they had a grasp on the concept that technology was going to start jumping. It just seems like that they had enough pieces in place that could happen. But Wayne or Baldini, got anything you want to chime in on that before we move on?
I'm a geometric agnostic. I tend to remain pretty level-headed about the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm just one of those folks that I recognize that we're not being told the truth about where it is that we exist. As far as some of the other properties of this place, they line up with a couple different possibilities, depending on what kind of a viewpoint or a stance you take from it. I mean, you could mathematically prove or disprove either one of the models, the globe model or the flat Earth model. That's the whole thing. Our science, I would go a step further, even from saying that our world is misdescribed to us. Even our entire way of science, our methods of science are misdescribed to us. The way that they describe things and explain this modern day science, it works totally different from how they tell you. Okay, but some of the effects and stuff that we see from it are real effects, and these things work a certain way, but they don't exactly know how, or if they do, they're not telling you the correct way how, but they use the mathematic equations to make it line up with the model that they want to present to you. And that's the thing. Most scientists anymore are basically mathematicians, and that's where it comes from. They do everything right. They do everything with the math to make it line up to what their worldview is, rather than go where the evidence takes them. I mean, experimentation and true scientific method have not been followed now for many decades.
For many
decades.
Of things.
So
you're going to get the results.
And that's the very definition of pseudoscience, right?
Let's get this very clear.
when it comes to math and magic, I mean, remind me sometime to. I got a standard quadratic equation. I can prove any number equal to any other number. If you do it longhand on paper, you can prove any number is equal to any other number. And it, it drove me crazy when I was in, high school, until I figured it out. Right, I was like, oh no!
You're like, wait a second, I can cross multiply everything and make it work.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
That's exactly what they did, and this picked up in the mid to late 1800s. Like you said, all of these things line up with that timeline, and that's when they started misdescribing how the science works. Is in that time frame, because that's about the same time where. If you look at physics as an example, they always looked at an ether model of how physics works. And they started to shift away from that towards things like relativity coming up in, I think it was 1903, I think is when Einstein came up with that, or 1901, I forget
think
now.
He published it in 14, or it became accepted.
Yeah, but he started working on it back,
exactly.
way back then. But at any rate, that's neither here nor there, but you could see how they
it's all relative.
To shift away. Right. Just like where I live here in Knoxon, it's all relative. No,
oh my,
oh my,
go.
But anyway, the whole point I'm making is this is when they started to really misdescribe how these scientific things work, how they operate, and this is also the same time where we see a shift in the dynamic of the things they were trying to achieve through science. This is where things like eugenics spring up and Darwinian evolution. Dinosaurs, all of this stuff comes to fruition right in that same time frame. So I'm thinking that's when there was a big step forward, when they realized, okay, we could start planning on some of these different technological type advances, but this is how we want to steer it, because it's all the same controlling factions at the top of the power structure. Even back then, it's all these quote unquote royal bloodlines or whatever that they want to claim that they are.
And it does seem. Yeah. It does seem, from from an overview, the sort of the 50,000-foot view, that it's not just one aspect, but nearly every aspect of this world has been misdescribed or completely deceived about. So from the historical timeline to science, right, to our worldview and our cosmology, it seems like everything has been a lie. And so to that end, and again, over multi-generational. I mean, and most of them use exactly the same methodology, the old, stage magician, right? It's misdirection. So exactly the same thing as you were saying, Wayne, with the scientific method. You demonstrate the scientific method as being, it's a very specific process that proves cause and effect by using experiments. Oh, hello. Oh, and so you use those experiments that have demonstrable.
Hey, carry it for a second there, gentlemen.
Yep. Okay. So so they use the scientific method to demonstrate empirically proven cause and effect. And so once they get everybody kind of nodding about that and saying yes, that's proves things, and then they just start slipping in all the nonsense. Yeah, exactly. Classic sleight of hand, David Barsky. It's exactly what it is. It's the sleight of hand. Hey, look over here, right? And
right, yeah. So that's the thing. I mean, they started. Like I said, it's amazing how it lines up with that time frame.
Jason,
it all started.
And helpful if you'd mute the mic while you're having that conversation.
Well, I did to the live stream, so.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't help us, though.
It wasn't helping us. It's
sorry, I always
forget
that there's two mutes I got to hit, but I just want to see what Steve's plans were, because he was planning on stopping by and visiting. He's welcome to stay as long as he wants, but I think he's going to jet, so.
Yeah, I got to get some rest.
He's got to get some rest.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, this was a
Thanks
real
for
treat.
stopping by, dude.
Yeah,
we appreciate you, man.
You're welcome. It's an honor being here. And,
pleasure meeting you.
Wayne, we've had you on on the Free Zone, and Baldini.
Got to get him on.
Got to get you on sometime too.
Love to. Anytime.
Yep. Thanks.
Just get my email from Jason. Get my contact info.
Okay.
I'd be happy to. Anytime.
All right.
Make that happen.
All right, guys, we'll do.
Gentlemen, carry this for 5 minutes for me. I'll be right back.
Sounds good. Don't forget to mute your mic.
Oh, the joys of live radio here.
Oh, indeed. I love it.
It is wonderful. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
At some point, we'll get to this document. Though,
we will.
At some point.
Well, I think the overview, if you kind of look at this, it all goes back to, I think let's dovetail. One of the things we can dovetail with this document is the conversation that we were just having, is that this has been the foundations of this and what we would call predictive programming have been laid a very, very long time ago. And the idea of robotics, human transhumanism, the integration of humans and machine, even the presentation of the idea of humans as a machine, not only physically, but the mind being a computer, which again, it's a terrible misdescription. It's not that way at all. And then once they, kind of firm up and concrete that idea in the public mind and make a meme out of it, it becomes an easy jump, a leap of logic to simply add on, oh, well, if your brain works like a computer, let's add a super chip processor to it and give you Wi-Fi, and there you go. Thomas Buse, my wife would say that I am a polar bear. I am hideously white and very melanin challenged, to use a more politically correct term. But I am smooth on top. That's and carpet matches the drapes. Wait, no, it's a hardwood.
Oh boy.
Okay. There you go. So we got that going for us, which is nice. So yeah, anyway, so this whole thing combined with, as Wayne always talks about, cybernetics, right, which we often equate, it's a bit of semantic drift, but we equate that with the idea of robotics, but it's not really. Again, cybernetics, the etymology comes directly from piloting a ship, that you're in control. It's a controlled feedback loop. It's exactly what we see with programming and the engineering of society with things like the Tavistock Institute and the Rand Corporation, is that they test these ideas and then they review the results and come back and keep doing it in a feedback loop. So, that's exactly what we see with the data that's been extracted through social engineering platforms, through you carrying your phone around, all this stuff and everything that's been compromised, all the data that gets sourced to the NSA, and they process it all, put it into supercomputers and run simulations on you, on every living being on this earth. And they come up with simulations and run several at the same time, and essentially not only try to predict, but to program you to an emotional response, just like we were talking about with the polarization of society and people immediately reacting, not responding. As soon as they give you an emotional response, I mean, this is what we cover the Poppycock Report, Rose and I, every Tuesday and Thursday, is you can look at the headlines and see just the headlines created to create an emotional response. You have to read the article. It's designed to make you feel a certain way. And often when you go and look at the article, it's poorly written, but the actual data is different. The story is different, even what the headline is. It's what we would call clickbait. But the idea is simply to get an emotional reaction from you where you cannot have a thoughtful response. And you should be aware of that. Anytime you have an emotional reaction to this, right? It's just to consider, for example, the Floyd incident, right? The moment I saw that, I knew that it was probably in question because it created such a strong emotional reaction. It was clearly designed to do that, so that people have this emotional response. Once they get you in an emotional reaction where you cannot really think, you're done, right? And so my wife and I were talking about this morning, as a matter of fact, on the idea that most decisions that people make are entirely emotionally based. Every bit of logic they throw at it is simply confirmation bias. It's just to justify why they did a certain thing. So they have to have justification for what they did. But almost every decision, from purchasing to relationships, every decision really is an emotional decision.
Indeed, and that's kind of something they've gotten really good at doing, is knowing what is going to be your emotional trigger and actually tailoring that to you. You can see that with social media, the things that come across your Facebook timeline or whatever, the things that you'll see, they're
the skewed
all
algorithms.
They're all designed to invoke a certain specific emotional response from you, and it's used to further separate us, cause division, first of all, and put us into our own little peer groups and our own little private echo chambers. And that's kind of what happened with social media. It's amazing. If you look, you'll notice that you see the same posts from the same few people all the time. It separates you out. It shows you what it thinks you should see, or you want to see, or that it wants you to see, and that's what you get. So, and you could tell if you were to look through somebody else's feed, Theirs would be totally different.
Very different. Yes.
Yeah.
I
So
even have different accounts that are different based on. I behave a little bit differently with both accounts, and so the feed is completely different. Even though many of the friends are the same.
Isn't that, that's like the most telling thing right there, that they're literally tailoring it to whatever you're giving them.
Absolutely.
Scary, really.
What's funny, it's actually funny to me, is that some of the ads that I get in social media, they're supposed to be, tailored to you. I mean, they know everything about me, right? So everything from what I eat, because of my purchasing habits, and what I buy, and when I poop. I mean, they know everything about me. And yet you'd think some of the ads seem to be trolling me, right? Like things that I would absolutely never, like, hey, you want a mask? You want a fashion mask? No.
Vote Joe Biden.
I do not want a fashion mask. And a number of different things, right, that I would just absolutely not be into. But it's like they're trolling me. It's actually really kind of amusing. And my wife and I we joke all the time. We'll talk to our devices, to the NSA guy on the other line, and just go, I know they're sitting there on the other end going, oh, God, what fresh new hell is this? These people. And we're pretty convinced that they give people our account for if they're in detention. Right, they screwed up.
It's the digital devil.
Now they have to. Yes, they got to listen to us. But yes, we.
The digital devil is sitting on the other side going, exactly. You want a mask?
You're right. Exactly. So we have fun with it.
Well, that's what you got to do, because maybe that way we could break the algorithms.
I continue to say that I don't think, on the serious note, I don't think that they're programmed to handle genuine love and connection with the universe. I don't think they're not programmed to receive, right? And so I think it breaks the matrix when you are in connection with the creation and the creator, and you behave from a genuine place and not responding to the program. It fucks it up, and it's amusing to me. But people don't know how to handle it often, right? They don't know what to do with genuine humanity. And when you're honest and transparent and direct with them, they genuinely don't know how to handle it.
That's because everything thrown at them all day long is a lie.
Yeah.
Everyththing that comes out of their TV or that device that they have, their cell phone,
and their own social media page, right, is a PR version of their life. It's not genuine. So, and even again, people do it in person. And they always tailor everything to make the best impression. And they don't want to offend people, and they use the politically correct words for things. Again, one of the most hated things you can do these days is to tell the truth. And again, I just try to speak the truth, in love. And some people accept it, and others do not. But it's an interesting litmus test, that's for certain.
By the way, I wasn't really watching the chats at all, so if anybody was trying to ask me anything, I'm sure I didn't catch it. So if there's anything you need me to address.
Lots of questions about your hair.
Oh, I use Monate, and I'm going to be doing a video with Rose and I have a mutual friend named Kelsey who introduced me to the whole thing.
Are you going to get your hair sponsored, dude? That is awesome.
Isn't it?
I love it. That is
man, I'll tell you, the stuff is pricey, and I'll never doubt that, but goddamn, this stuff works. I mean, it really restored my hair to, this is why I'm on about it so much. Like, my hair, I'm 47. Like, my hair was starting to show its age. I've had long hair since I was 17, and this stuff, took a few months. I don't even know exactly how long, but I did it exactly the way you're supposed to do it, and by God, my hair's really friggin' healthy again. So, yeah.
I should get a sponsorship from razor blades. Those things are freaking expensive.
They are. They definitely. maybe Harry's or Dollar Shave Club. Yeah. But anyway, all right. So let's dig into this.
To the brain.
Whole brain emulation, a roadmap. The Future of Humanity Institute, Oxford
GPS
University.
Does not work on my brain map. I promise. Several road closed signs.
All right, so let's jump down here. Whole brain emulation, or WBE, the possible future one-to-one modeling of the function of the human brain, is academically interesting and important for several reasons. One is research, obviously. Brain emulation is the logical endpoint of computational neuroscience's attempt to accurately model neurons and brain systems. Brain emulation would help us to understand the brain, both in the lead-up to successful emulation and afterwards, by providing an ideal testbed for neuroscientific experimentation and study. Neuromorphic engineering based on partial results would be useful in a number of applications, such as pattern recognition, AI, and brain-computer interfaces. As a long-term research goal, it might be a strong vision to stimulate computational neuroscience. As a case of future studies, it represents a case where a radical future possibility can be examined in the light of current knowledge. So my immediate takeaway from this is that if they study the human brain more and get it better, then they can immediately apply that to artificial intelligence systems to make them more powerful. That's my first thought on all this, but how about you guys?
Yeah, that's my first thought too. But my second thought is AI and brain-computer interfaces. They're talking about BCI. This is they want to hook it to your brain, so that they want your brain actually hooked to the cloud. So here you go. You're being hooked up to the Internet of Things. Your brain, your mind, your thought processes, the Internet of Thoughts. We've talked about this before. Yep. It's a real thing. There's actual papers and stuff written about the Internet of Thoughts. It's in the planning phases. I don't think, not in the public domain do they have the technology ready for that yet, but I suspect that in the behind the scenes black budget programs of the military industrial complex, I'm sure they're pretty close at this point. So if you want to look at it from that point of view, remember this paper we're going through was written in 2008, and this is actually 2 years after the Sentient World simulation came online at Purdue University. So that is something they've already been modeling people's behaviors and emulating brain function 2 years before this paper even came out. So, I mean, they're talking about things that were probably already underway for the past 10 years before that. Sure. In this. So, you're looking at it.
Although I think, again, considering the technology that we're looking at and the complexity of the human mind, the fact that we do not yet fully or even really well understand both human consciousness as well as even memory function. We don't know yet where the memory is stored. It does not even seem to be stored inside the brain, and there's all kinds of evidence that there are, when people get transplants of organs, they begin to have memories of the other person. So I look at this probably in a darker way, that if you get this idea out there that it's possible, then you could store people's memory in a computer. Right. So similar to the idea that you're going to cryogenically freeze someone and bring them back later when you have a solution to their whatever problem, their illness. I think the idea here, if you wanted to sell people on the idea that we're going to take your Uncle Fred, who is a crazy conspiracy tinfoil hat guy, and and so what we're going to do is we're going to download his consciousness. We'll store him on this thumb drive, and then we'll build a body for him later, and we'll reprogram him and bring him back. And if they can successfully demonstrate, or at least enough people who believe that there's a Tesla floating around in space that would buy into this, and they could successfully do it, a lot of people would be more than okay with having loved ones recycled or bad things done. Simulated. Yeah. I think that people would be much more open to the idea, but even themselves, right? If they have some physical difficulty or they become paralyzed or something like that, here we'll just we'll just take a sample of your brain and we'll plug you in and give you a better body, and people I think would believe that. Now, will they do that? I don't know, but I do think that transhumanism is part of a deception, and again, I would not accept any sort of technology added to my body or brain ever, ever. So yeah, I'm going to that long dirt nap if you try that, because I ain't going.
There's a TV show based off of a set of novels called Altered Carbon that is basically this concept. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. They're on the second season. The first season was really good. I actually watched it. Started the second one. Didn't seem quite as interesting, but the basic concept is this, where what do they call them? Stacks. They called them stacks, and it was an implant you get at birth in your neck, in the back of your neck, in your spinal cord, and your self, your identity is constantly being, I guess, copied or do. They never really quite explain it, but like you're going into that in some way, shape, or form, and then that stack, that disc, whatever it is, can be removed and actually put in another body. And they have terms for all this crap, and it's very fascinating. It's very transhuman. They've got very realistic AIs that are basically people and things like that. So it's that kind of concept being pushed all over and over and over again.
Yeah, and that's more predictive programming, because that's the kind of stuff that they have in mind with this. They want to be able to digitally upload your consciousness into the computer interface, like the internet, pretty much. Sure. And that way you could have multi-bodied existence, or exist in different virtual worlds, multi-world existence, right?
Like Singularity, the movie,
yeah,
right? That idea, and they push that hard. And I know many people who love that idea, that they could turn off all the pain of their aging or hurting bodies, and simply be uploaded into the internet, right, and just live that way. I just don't think it works like that.
No, but they're really, if you give somebody who has, say, an atheistic type of viewpoint, or the hyper materialist viewpoint that they really push, and that's what social engineering is mostly geared toward, is this hyper materialist mentality, where everything is the physical, and everything that's here, all the physical is all that there is. So that's kind of what they're pushing. So they want you to think that your mind, or your consciousness, is simply a chemical byproduct of the electrical activity of your brain.
Yep.
So
and
that
they could duplicate that. Yeah.
Right, and if they could duplicate that digitally, then you could live forever and be immortal, and be able to transcend, the limitations of your body.
Atheist heaven.
Yeah, precisely.
I think they're trying to convince people that you can have a digital soul, though. I mean, the reason why I even called it that is I actually wrote a short story I submitted 15 years ago to a Doctor Who. It was like a collection or something, and I wrote a story called Digital Soul, and it was about the first time a robot in the Doctor Who universe where there is sentient AI. The first time one actually became sentient, the Doctor was defending him in a court. I didn't get chosen, though. But I thought, what's that?
You wrote fan fiction? That's awesome.
It was fan fiction that could have been official, because it was part of. They were taking a collection of whomever they thought was the best, and I didn't get picked, and I thought my story was pretty good.
No, I mean it is pretty good. Maybe it's a little too accurate, because it seems again like they're pushing this from both sides. The idea of artificial intelligence becoming sentient, and again this whole brain emulation, right, where they take your spirit, your essence, and digitize it.
Well, that's what they're trying to convince us of here. So let's keep on moving on.
Keeping on. Yeah.
The next subject matter here is economics. The economic impact of copyable brains could be immense and could have profound societal consequences. Even low probability events of such magnitude merit investigation. Next, individually. If emulation of particular brains is possible and affordable, and if concerns about individual identity can be met, such emulation would enable backup copies and digital immortality. Okay, well that's what we just said. That's the altered carbon concept.
That's the goal. Yeah.
Philosophy. Brain emulation would itself be a test of many ideas in the philosophy of mind and philosophy of identity, or provide a novel context for thinking about such ideas. It may represent a radical new form of human enhancement. Well, here we go again. That's all transhumanism to the T here. This is Zoltan Istvan sprinkling sugar on his Cheerios.
Sprinkles on turds.
I like the guy, believe it or not. I mean, I don't agree with all of what he's pushing for, but I generally actually do like the dude. He's interesting.
I have several friends that that I like that I don't agree with.
That's for sure.
All right.
Yeah, you could see what way they're trying to steer this whole conversation right there. And just as a little aside, if anybody's interested, up under the section where it says economics here, it talks about the economic impact of copyable brains could be immense and could have profound social consequences. And then it cites there Hansen 1994 2008b. If you actually go to my YouTube channel, Alchemical Tech Revolution, look for a speech there. It was a TED Talk from this guy. His name's Robin Hansen, and he talks about this very thing, how uploading digital copies of your brain into the computer could create this internal digital world called the EM world, this emulate world that will actually so greatly improve the production capacity of economies that it would surpass the real world economy within 2 to 3 years.
Second and then after life on steroids.
Right, and then beyond that, they're not sure what exactly would happen then. If the citizens of this M world, these digital copies of our own consciousness, would think of us as kind of an antiquated type thing, and turn against us or not. So it's an interesting thing to think about. But this is another scenario where the artificial intelligence goes rogue and takes the best traits of a lot of us and puts them together into this new economy, this economic engine that runs completely digitally. It creates a whole digital economy that surpasses the actual real world economy, and that's kind of what that's talking about there. It's an interesting thing to look at, because this guy's he's an economist, but he got thinking about this whole idea, and he's actually done several presentations and written several books about it, and he's got some interesting views on things. He's one of those that completely shuffles aside the ethical concerns and everything else and doesn't look at that or the philosophical impact, but he thinks this might be an interesting way things could go. So
well, there's a big difference between, say, like a RoboCop scenario or a Ghost in the Shell or anything like that, where you're taking the human body and you're still leaving the brain pretty much intact. The brain, the spinal cord, like the core of what makes the body function, it's still there. That's one thing. You're cybernizing the rest, compared to copying data, for lack of a better term, of what's in the brain and just having that uploaded to a computer. Those are two different things. And I guess for atheists it doesn't matter. You could have duplicates, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It depends who you ask, because if they could actually use different types of nanomaterials and use actual biological materials to reproduce these things in another form, you're not talking simply about just digital information. They could actually transcend from one body to the next with this, per se, like a biological component. They have the technologies to actually grow tissue and stuff like that, and do these kind of things. And I think it probably talks about that a little bit further down in the document too. So we should continue on here, because we've spent very little time on this show actually talking about the topic. So.
I know, right? All right. WBE represents a formidable engineering and research problem, yet one which appears to have a well-defined goal and could, it would seem, be achieved by extrapolations of current technology. By the way, this document is 20 years old, somewhere around there.
2008, I think it was written. 2008. Okay.
This is unlike many other suggested radically transformative technologies like artificial intelligence, where we do not have any clear metric of how far we are from success. In order to develop ideas about the feasibility of WBE, ground technology foresight, and stimulate interdisciplinary exchange, the Future of Humanity Institute hosted a workshop on May 26th and 27th, 2007 in Oxford. Invited experts from areas such as computational neuroscience, brain scanning technology, computing, nanotechnology, and neurobiology presented their findings and discussed the possibilities, problems, and milestones that would have to be reached before WBE becomes feasible. The workshop avoided dealing with socioeconomic ramifications and with philosophical issues, such as theory of mind, identity, or ethics. God forbid we have any ethics. While important, such discussions would undoubtedly benefit from a more comprehensive understanding of the brain, and it was this understanding that we wished to focus on furthering during the workshop. Such issues will likely be dealt with at future workshops. This document combines an earlier white paper that was circulated among workshop participants and additions suggested by those participants before, during, and after the workshop. It aims at providing a preliminary roadmap for WBE, sketching out key technologies that would need to be developed or refined, and identifying key problems or uncertainties. Brain emulation is currently only a theoretical technology. This makes it vulnerable to speculation, hand-waving, and untestable claims. All right. I think that'll do for that part. So what do we want to go down to here? So.
Yeah, that's a mouthful.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. A radical new form of human enhancement.
Indeed.
If only somebody could come up with something like a brain implant where we can start communicating with computers, or I wonder if they'll ever come up with something like that.
I wonder. I wonder if they would have something. Maybe you could, just plug it into the side of your head.
Like a neurological link.
Yeah. Something like that.
A Neuralink. We'll just call it a Neuralink. That sounds great.
What a great idea.
Brilliant.
You know
All
how we
right.
could actually sell this thing? Let's do a demonstration where we show people pigs.
Okay, that'd be great.
Three little
let's get
pigs.
Elon Musk in. Let's get
Gotta
Elon
have
Musk.
three little
Everybody
pigs.
loves him.
Yes, indeed. Elon, whose name actually, when you break down Elon, it's L and on. Nothing Masonic going on there. But that's beside the point. Okay.
And never mind that von Braun wrote a book about going to Mars where the leader was Elon.
Yeah.
All right, let's get
Yes,
down
and-
to the concept of brain emulation. Whole brain emulation, officially, often informally called uploading or downloading, has been the subject of much science fiction and also some preliminary studies for history and previous work. Did I just skip a line? Has been the subject of much science fiction, also some preliminary studies. This basic idea is to take a particular brain, scan its structure in detail, and construct a software model of it that is so faithful to the original that when run on appropriate hardware, it will behave in essentially the same way as the original brain. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, gentlemen. Didn't they do an estimation on just how much data a real brain and all of its memories and everything would actually need, and it was like some obscene amount?
It's a shit ton, and that's again based on their poor understanding. And every time, again, just like most things, every time you answer a question, there's 10 more difficult questions that come out of it. We have no idea not only how consciousness works, how memory works. We have the faintest idea of how neuroscience at all works. This idea is it's snake oil at best. They can do a few, again, magic tricks and a few, again, stage magic. It's nonsense. They're never going to have anything that is actually real. It may look real, but I mean, I remember as a kid in the 1970s, I went to, was it Expo 72, 76, maybe 72 in Spokane, Washington. It's a World's Fair. And science was a big thing there. And they had, of course, computers that were supposed to, you write your signature on a piece of paper and it goes through and it goes with all the flashy lights, right? It comes out and gives you this like personality assessment. And it's the same sort of cold reading that they do. What's the guy's name that talks to the dead, right? It's cold reading, and what much of
John Edward, the jackass.
There you go, John Edwards, right? That's the guy, and and I've seen the same sort of thing in very charismatic Christian circles that do the prophetic thing. It's a lot of a cold reading. Not to say there's not people that really doing that, but cold reading is a big thing. And it basically is that, like what much of modern astrology is in the newspaper. It's very much like that. It's sort of generic, stuff you want to hear. But they had a lot of people convinced, right, that computers were real smart in 72, and it was clearly a bunch of nonsense. So as we move forward, this idea, as we've discussed over and over, has been
Just depends on what tape they put on.
Yeah, exactly. But it's funny. I mean, it's funny, but I guess what's not funny is how easily people are duped, and how badly they want to believe.
Well, not only that, even though they may have some accurate physical descriptions of, some things that may go on in the brain or the body, that does not, first of all, equate consciousness or mind. So even if you're looking at it as being, they have some physical understanding of how this stuff works and may be able to tap into that, it's still, they don't understand the whole process of, even like you said, where memory is even stored. They still argue to this day that your brain is the thing where your memories are stored, right? Well, that doesn't necessarily
demonstrably
hold true.
Not true. Yeah, they can't
Right.
do it. And I mean, I do. Don't get me wrong. I do think it is possible with using technology to, especially with an implanted technology, to put thoughts and sounds in the person's head. Has been demonstrated. You can use microwaves and a variety of different ways to make your just even using acoustic
Absolutely.
technology to make the bones in your head receive sound as though, and you can't localize it because it's not coming in through your ears. It's coming in through your body, and so you can't localize it. So to you, it seems like a voice in your head. And they've been doing that for years. You can demonstrably do that. So I don't.
Many years.
Yeah, so I don't dismiss at all the idea that you could take technology and implant a chip like Neuralink and introduce ideas and thoughts and do the whole thing where they punish you, right? If you have wrong think or have intent. I mean, even South Park did a thing on this. Remember Cartman? He got buzzed if he swore.
This child
right?
has been implanted with the new V chip.
Barbra Streisand. oh dear. That's yeah. So again, anyway, I don't dismiss the idea that can happen, but they'll sell it under it being something very different.
Yeah, but the hubris of these jackwagons, they really think they can figure this all out and really do this. that is as hubristic as it gets, I would say, in my
lab
view.
coat wizards for sure.
Yes, I understand the workings of the human brain and the human mind, and we can actually simulate that and build it better than it was.
Bring my creation to life.
All right, let's get down to emulation and simulation. The term emulation originates in computer science, where it denotes mimicking the function of a program or computer hardware by having its low-level functions simulated by another program. While a simulation mimics the outward results, an emulation mimics the internal causal dynamics at some suitable level of description. The emulation is regarded as successful if the emulated system produces the same outward behavior and results as the original, possibly with a speed difference. This is somewhat softer than a strict mathematical definition. According to the Church Turing thesis, a Turing machine can emulate any other Turing machine. The physical Church Turing thesis claims that every physically computable function can be computed by a Turing machine. This is the basis for brain emulation. If brain activity is regarded as a function that is physically computed by brains, then it should be possible to compute it on a Turing machine. Even if true, however, it does not demonstrate that it is a computationally feasible process.
There's the ifs and the thens. If this is true, then this is a thing. See, here's the thing. They don't know, but they're pretending like they know. They put on the facade that they know what they're talking about. If, then. They don't have a clue. It's never really been scientifically shown through the scientific method. That's why they have to do this. They have to make a lot of assumptions in order for this to work. And that's why I say all the time, our science, the way we view science is misdescribed to us. Because this is it. They put all these assumptions in place, and then they tailor the mathematics to meet those assumptions, and then they say, science! And throw their hands in the air. And you're a science denier if you don't believe them.
Right.
Because if you don't believe them, you're a racist.
Yeah, a Nazi.
You racist Nazi science deniers.
Science denier.
Anti-vaxxer.
Anti-vax. I was just going to go there.
Trump
just
lover.
going to go there. Oh, my gosh. Yes.
In the following, emulation will refer to a one-to-one model where all relevant properties of a system exist, while a simulation will denote a model where only some properties exist. Emulations may behave differently from each other or the original due to noise or intrinsic chaos, but behave within the range of what one would expect from the original if it had experienced the same noise or chaos. By analogy, with a software emulator, we can say that a brain emulator is software and possibly dedicated non-brain hardware that models the states and functional dynamics of a brain at a relatively fine-grained level of detail. In particular, a mind emulation is a brain emulator that is detailed and correct enough to produce the phenomenological effects of a mind. A person emulation is a mind emulation that emulates a particular mind. You know what? Is anyone familiar with the concept of amplifier modeling? I know Baldini certainly will be.
Yeah.
Okay, so this stuff's been around since the late 90s is when they first started really messing around with it. Now, they've come a long, long way, but even still, they can't get that to the point that it's so good that you can't tell the difference. It's really close, mind you.
Yeah, at first blush it is, and I mean all the way back to sampling of like any instrument, strings and stuff back in the 90s. At first blush, it sounds pretty impressive, but as you continue to do it, obviously the brain is really, really smart, and it knows instinctively that there's something just not quite right about it, right? For all the things, like for example, string samples, you miss the movement of air in the room that you would get from bowing, and the tiny little differences in the finger fretting position and pressure that's put on the string. So those things
And the inaccuracies, that's the big thing.
Exactly.
There's inaccuracies that would be in anything that if you're doing digital.
Touch. Well, they found that out early on with drum machines in the late 80s, right? They said, oh, drummers always tend to drift a little bit in their rhythm, right? The old joke, how do you know when a drummer's at your door? Because the knock speed's up. How do you make him go away? Pay him for the pizza. Anyway, the difference between a large pepperoni pizza and a drummer. Large pepperoni pizza can feed a family of 4. But anyway, sorry, don't get me started. Anyway, but we were like, oh, can't we make a perfect drummer? Yeah, we'll make a drum machine. Until we realized how bad that actually sounds, right? It lacks feel altogether. And then, with the drum machine, what happens when you spill beer in the drum machine? It tries to sing.
Here we go.
You can tell he's been in bands a long time. Believe me, I feel the same way. Drummers have noticeably been a pain in the ass.
Well, what does it mean when a drummer drools out both sides of his mouth? The stage is level. Oh, dear. What is it? Never mind. What do you call a drummer without a girlfriend? Homeless? Yeah. How do you get a drummer's car to go faster? Yeah, like a drummer with a car. Come on, man. All right, I got to stop. All right. So anyway, but yeah, the things that we do that are digitally perfect don't sound right, and the same goes with again going back to the music idea that we do digitally created music and sequencing and that sort of stuff, and then again it sounds inhuman. It doesn't sound right. So now they have what's called groove quantization, which basically means it uses algorithms to introduce a certain amount of randomness, ever slight little slips here and there to make it feel more human. Because the air is human, and to really fuck things up takes a computer. I'm on a roll. I don't know what happened, man. I swear, I didn't take mushrooms or anything.
It's all about the groove quantization,
But you did eat them.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Sorry about that. Because I could do say how many drummers would take to screw in a light bulb? 11. 1 to hold the light bulb, and 10 to drink until the room begins to spin.
Hey guys, I wrote a song. Look, everyone, Ringo wrote a song.
He wrote a song. That's all right. But Jason, you'll appreciate this. How many guitar players take the screw in a light bulb? 41. 1 to do it and 40 to go. I could do that.
I could do that better.
Right. And then how many bass players to take the screw in a light bulb? Only 1, but the guitar player has to show them how. Oh, snap. Okay, we'll move on. I'm gonna get sued by every musician in the chat. They'd be like, "That's not true." Yeah, except for it kind of is.
Except for the drummer one, but
yeah, it kind of is. Truth, pain, comedy.
Says Wayne the drummer.
Close together, right?
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, what do you call a guy who likes to hang out with musicians? A drummer. Yeah. You're right. When you cross a drummer and a roadie, a really bad roadie
who never shows up on time.
Yeah, never. Okay, sorry. All right, let's keep going.
Where were we here?
All right, need for whole system understanding. An important hypothesis for WBE is that in order to emulate the brain, we do not need to understand the whole system, but rather, we just need a database containing all necessary low-level information about the brain and knowledge of the local update rules that change brain states from moment to moment. I fundamentally disagree with this, being a layman as much as I could. Completely and utterly,
really
for the same analogy I just made about the two band things. You can't just take like the EQ curve, for instance. Like, I'm trying to think of how to explain this to people who don't know anything about what I'm talking about. It doesn't work. That's why early Line 6 gear from the 90s and the early 2000s sounded so sterile. But anyway, sorry, Wayne, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, that's okay. I was just saying that, that kind of defies logic a little bit. We don't need to understand how the whole thing works to make the whole thing work. That's like saying, we could install this air conditioning unit without knowing what parts go where. We just need to know what parts there are. That's all.
All right. I know we don't have a ton of time left, so You guys looked at this more than I did. What should we get to that's important?
I wanted to jump down to page 107. This is a very long document.
Yeah.
So maybe
Before you jump
wasn't a good
before you
choice.
jump that far, I just a couple of little spots here. Of course, they don't have the benefit of having this document unless you put the link in there. Page 26. Again, they show that this is where they try to sell it, right? In the same way that they try to say, okay, so the scientific process demonstrates a cause and effect relationship, and so that's how we know things. And then they do the old switcheroo, right? And then bring in scientism and say scientists believe. Yeah, those things don't go together, right? So here they show, again, figure 8, Caner habitus elegans, a popular model organism. It's got 302 neuron nervous system, right? So they say they're fully modeling that. But okay, so they know what connects to what, but they can't duplicate it. They can't predict with it. I mean, but they pretend to. And this is the same thing that now they go into this idea of fruit flies, right? Well, the reason we use fruit flies for scientific studies is because they have a very short lifespan, and they take pretty well to genetic mutation. And so you can try out genetic mutations and watch numerous generations over a very short period of time. And so they're again using a false equivalency to say, look, we've already done this stuff, so we can easily do this.
Right. Just as a little side notion there. From what you were just saying there. This is a side thought. It has nothing to do with this, but this is just something I've observed. How long have scientists, quote-unquote scientists, been working with fruit flies? Probably for, at least the past 100 years or so, right?
Back to the 1800s, yeah.
How many generations of fruit flies could have been produced and reproduced in the laboratory setting since then? How many millions and possibly billions of generations of fruit flies? Billions and billions, and yet they never evolved into anything other than a fruit fly, did they? So that kind of throws the whole theory of
they didn't turn into pigeons. Are you kidding me? Oh no, they did. They murder hornets. They became hornets. Okay, sorry.
Let's jump down to scanning because this seems interesting. The first step in brain emulation is to acquire the necessary information from a physical brain. We will call this step scanning. Brain emulation for compartment models of neuron activity needs to acquire both geometric data about the localization and morphology of the nervous connections and functional chemical data about their nature, such as what ion channels, receptors, and neurotransmitters are present, the presence of electrical synapses, electrical membrane properties, phosphorylation states of synapses, and genetic expression states. This must be done at a sufficient resolution. It may be possible to infer some functional properties, such as whether a synapse is excitatory, I just lost my place, or inhibitory purely from geometry. For example, a synapse from a smooth neuron with a particular morphology is likely inhibitory. Yet it remains unclear how much information about synaptic strength and neuromodulator type can be inferred from pure geometry at a given level of resolution. Now, again, I can make the same example with digital sampling. Like, you only get so much in digital. What sampling means is how many times you can get an analog piece of data per second. And the more data you have, the more realistic. Yeah. Right, this is sample rate. I could give the very technical sides of it, but not everybody understands the audio stuff, so I'm trying to really just as basic as possible.
Yeah,
how many snapshots a second can the digital look at whatever the analog waveform is? And this doesn't even have to be audio. This could literally be anything, and they're making the same comparison here. So the more samples per second they can get, the more accurate it'll be. Guess what the truth about it is, though? It'll never get all of it because it's not real.
Right. So the idea is, as Jason says, so the sample rate, basically pulse code modulation, what it does, you think of the analog waveform and think of a wave. So it just takes a sample of each one, and then it stair steps in between them. And the sample rate is, again, how many times per second. And the Nyquist theorem basically states that whatever frequency you want to get, you have to do twice that. So the range of human hearing is supposedly around 20,000 hertz. So you have to do it 40,000 times to do that. So they gave a little for error correction, and that gave you to 44.1, which is the standard for
Compact
CDs,
disc,
44.1 kilohertz, so that's how many times for that. But the problem, as Jason pointed out, is there's still a stair-stepping there. So no matter how many times you do it, it's not a smooth, continuous analog waveform. Again, the ear is very smart. Just like it knows the difference between a sampled amplifier or a sampled string instrument, it will know the difference. At first blush, it seems fine, but the more you listen to it, you get very quick listening fatigue, listening to digital music. And certainly, again, these days, many people are listening to far less quality than that, not even 16-bit of 44.1. They're listening to MP3s, which are downsampled quite a bit. So, yeah, significantly. So the quality, even though the recording, not even to speak of the music, yeah, like what Stevie Wonder said. It's not that I'm not into. It's not that I don't like rap. It's just right now I'm into listening to music. Anyway, but the point being here that the quality of what we're listening to has been so degraded, and it seems to go along with the quality of the information we get overall, the quality of programming, the quality of news and music and films and journalism. Everything has been downgraded so much, even the quality of food, everything, and we're expected to accept it as normal.
Well, here's the other thing. We can continue with the audio analogy because it is so appropriate to this. Early CDs sound like garbage because it's not just about the sample rate. Sure, the Nyquist theorem does say that 44.1 will get that 20 to 20 that human hearing is supposed to be at. However, there are other factors that go in. People said all the time, way back in the early 80s when they first started releasing compact discs, if you took the identical album that was mastered the same way and compared it to the vinyl, to a brand new vinyl that hasn't been beat to shit, to the CD, it was immediately noticeable. Night and day difference. Now, it's come a long way. Man. I'm not going to say it hasn't. But oh my God, there are so many other components that go into besides just a sample rate. And this is immediately, you make the analogy immediately to this. It's not just about how many times can you sample the brain and other things going on there. What about the actual quality of the equipment, which is analogous to the quality of an analog to digital converter, for instance?
Sure. And each one is a snapshot. It might be a fairly accurate portrait of that in the moment. But as I've, described before when talking, a little bit more metaphysically about, how when people speak their truth, right, they might be giving an accurate description in a way that you could go down to the beach and take a pretty good picture, with a good camera. You could take a good picture, but it's still a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional space. Right. And even if you were to use film, even a 4K camera or anything that gets really tight shots, again, it's still a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional space. It's never going to be like even if you used holograms, right, that generated a 3D image, it's still not going to be the same as being there. And they can never duplicate or even really, I think, replicate well what happens in the not even human mind. I would say even in like a dog, right? You can never do even that. Even with this little microorganism that they showed previously, they've mapped it. Sure, they know all the nodes, but they can never duplicate what it actually does. It is simply not life.
And that's the whole key right there. They don't really know what is consciousness, what is life when it comes down to it. Like, sure. what is it that is the operating system behind all this? And that's kind of where they're trying to shift this view into the hyper-materialist view. And that's what it's all about with them.
Isn't this even like the Blade Runner analogy where they were trying to create artificial life and they were literally biological? They weren't even androids. They weren't robots. They were well, they called them replicants, but they were clonish. Yeah. They were unique clone. They weren't clones of a person, but they were, for all intents and purposes, like a clone. And what was the moral woven into that? They all went fucking nuts and tried to kill everybody.
But they wanted to live, right? They had a short lifespan, and they wanted to live. But, it's interesting, again, if you even go back to any of these organisms, right, all the same components are there when there's no more life. So where did that spark of life go, and how do we duplicate it? It can't be done. We have no idea what life or consciousness is. We just don't know. And again, I keep referring back to this, the idea, going back to philosophy, is the very basic of where all of science comes from, which is philosophy, which, again, etymologically simply means the love of knowledge. The affinity for knowledge is philo, to love, and Sophia, knowledge, wisdom. But that's philosophy. And the very first question, and the primary question, is what is consciousness? And that's the root of all the questions there, the foundation. And yet we've never answered that question, never even come close to answering that question, and run off on all kinds of different paths. But we've never gotten back to that basic foundational question. Neither, I think, will we, at least on this plane, like we are now. I don't think we have either the skills or the perspective to see it. But in any case, but that's what they're trying to tell us, right? Is they understand everything. They've got it all figured out, and they just don't.
And it's all physical. It's just this physical world. This is it. That's all there is.
And you're just a complicated machine. Yep, you're just a complicated machine. And once we figure out...
But that's the transhumanist point of view. Like, they don't believe in the concept of a soul. Whatever you truly are fundamentally, they are convinced that can be chopped away and replaced with parts that last a lot longer than the organics. But man, I don't think they're right. I mean, I guess this comes down to your spiritual point of views. But how many people have had enough spiritual experiences to prove that there is more beyond this world? And me. Yeah, me too.
Sorry. I'm easily distracted.
That's okay. We're all a little easily distracted at points too. But this is a perfect segue into the section I wanted to get to, Jason. If you just want to finish up this section there.
You go.
You want to get down to page 107, right?
Yeah, you could finish reading that, because this actually leads right into the stuff on page 107.
Oh, I don't know what page I was on, so we'll have to just jump down to this. I went down to it for you. All right, so non-destructive and gradual replacement. Non-destructive scanning requires minimally invasive methods. The scanning needs to acquire the relevant information at the necessary 3D resolution. There are, however, several serious limitations. The movement of biological tissue requiring either imaging faster than it can move or accurate tracking. In cats, the arterial pulse produces 120 to 266, what is that, picometers?
Yeah, picometers.
Picometer movements, lasting 330 to 400 milliseconds and breathing larger 300 to 950 picometer movements. The stability time is as short as 5 to 20 milliseconds. So basically, I think what they're getting at is, do they have processors fast enough to even do this?
Right. That's what it's talking about here with this non-destructive scanning bit. But it goes through the different methodologies for the non-destructive scanning, and then it goes into destructive scanning as well, which is where it starts to get a little more interesting here. But let's continue on with it.
Imaging has to occur over a distance of greater than 150 millimeters, the width of an intact brain, or be invasive. The imaging must not deposit enough energy or use dyes, tracers, or contrast enhancers to hurt the organism. The method must not significantly alter the mental or neural state of the subject being scanned in order to avoid a possibly significant observer effect, anomalies, and false reading that could produce a flawed emulation model. Oh, you mean they're going to go fucking nuts and try and kill everyone? Of the possible non-invasive candidates, only MRI appears able to fulfill the limitations, even in principle. Optic imaging, even using first arriving light methods, would not work across such a large distance. X-ray tomography of the intensity needed to image tissue would deposit harmful energy. Well, yeah, zap. The resolution of MRI depends on the number of phase steps used, gradient strength, acquisition time, and desired signal-to-noise ratio. Oh, by the way, that's another big one, signal-to-noise ratio. To record micron-scale features in a moving brain, very short acquisition times are needed, or a way of removing the movement artifacts. Each doubling of spatial resolution divides the signal-to-noise ratio by 8, requiring longer acquisition times, stronger fields, or more sensitive directors. Finally, there are also problems with tissue water self-diffusion, making resolutions smaller than 7.7 picometers impossible to achieve. Given that brain emulation on the synaptic level requires higher resolution, this probably rules out MRI as a non-destructive scanning method. However, If the brain is frozen, water diffusion and movement do not occur and very long acquisition times can be used. One problem with MRI of frozen brain tissues is that limited proton mobility reduces the signal. This can be ameliorated by keeping the brain at -1 degree Celsius. MRI might therefore be a possible scanning method for frozen or fixed brains. Since it is not destructive to the tissue, it may also act as an adjunct to other destructive scanning methods. We should probably talk about the concept of signal-to-noise ratio because that's significant. It's something that Dr. Kaufman even brought up in regards to the modern tests that don't do diddly shit. When you try and look at something and keep needing, you only have so much data to work with when you're talking about a digital thing. So if you're trying to get greater and greater detail, you need to keep blowing something up more and more and more and more. Guess what's going to happen? You're going to bring up the noise floor, for lack of a better term.
It works a lot like... Sorry, go ahead.
Wayne. No, go ahead, Wayne.
I was going to say it actually works a lot like pixelation of a picture, same kind of thing.
It's the same concept.
Like if you pull in a picture, you get all that pixelation as you get closer and closer when you try and get to the smaller and smaller on it. So it's the same kind of a thing.
Well, yeah, the easiest way to explain that is you download a
with
JPEG
music.
off of whatever. You go to Google Images, you take a picture you want to look at, and you want to see something in the background, you start doing the little plus thing, you start magnifying glassing, boom, boom. As you're getting larger, it's only got so much resolution to work with, and if you try to make it huge, what have you got? A great big squared out mess.
Yeah, and the same again applies with music. If you have a very or anything you're trying to amplify, if you have a very very low or insignificant signal, and you have to amplify that. The self noise of the amplifier is going to go right up with it, and so you have very very little signal to noise ratio. It's basically signal versus noise. It's expressed as a ratio, right? And when that's very low, it doesn't work. And it's the same reason we can. I was talking about to Bob Nadell about this with signal and wave propagation. For example, from quote space, going, the Voyager and that sort of stuff coming, like 10 trillionth of a watt coming over millions of miles. And the first square law says absolutely not. There's no way. There's no way you could ever find anything in the signal in either direction. And the idea that not only could we receive it, but send a signal back and it could receive it. It's preposterous. It is very silly. But yeah, this idea of signal to noise, again, anything digital. I think this goes along very well with what Crow is always saying. Again, this artificial world that they try to create, that they can be the Lord and Master over, since they can't really be the God of the natural created world. They create an artificial world and get everybody to sign on board so they can control that. It's the same thing as, again, Ready Player One or the Matrix and any of these things, that it is an artificial world that they control, that we consent to, so they can control that and control us.
Yeah, absolutely. That's 100% correct. So let's continue on, I guess, here.
All right, so you want to get down to gradual replacement?
Yeah, we could get there.
Scanning might also occur in the form of gradual replacement, as piece after piece of the brain is replaced by an artificial neural system interfacing with the brain and maintaining the same functional interactions as the lost pieces. Eventually, only the artificial system remains, and the information stored can be moved if desired. While gradual replacement might assuage fears of loss of consciousness and identity, it appears technically very complex, as the scanning system not only has to scan a living, changing organism, but also interface seamlessly with it, at least on the submicron scale, while working. The technology needed to achieve it could definitely be used for scanning by disassembly. Gradual replacement is, therefore, not likely as a first form of brain emulation scanning, though in practice it may eventually become the preferred method of non-destructive scan if non-destructive scanning is not possible. It is sometimes suggested that extending the brain through interfaces with external software might achieve a form of transfer where more and more of the entire person is stored outside the brain, possibly reaching the point where the brain is no longer essential for the composite person. However, this would not be brain emulation per se, but rather a transition to a post-human state. The technical feasibility appears ill-defined given current knowledge. It should be noted that even relatively partial such interfaces or life recording would produce a wealth of useful data for developing brain emulations by acting as a yardstick of normal function.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So there it is. What they eventually are thinking is probably the best way to go with this is to, in the process of scanning your brain to upload your consciousness, they gradually replace all of your existing brain matter with artificial stuff that emulates it. So that's kind of a disturbing development in and of itself, isn't it? And then they're saying that actually, if they can pull this off and do this, you might get to the point where you don't even really need your brain anymore in order for you to be who you are. So, and you could transfer your consciousness to another, any other container that you want, pretty much. So this is the whole promise of transhumanism right here. It's atheist heaven, like Baldini said. This is what they're talking about. It's the same kind of a philosophical concept of an afterlife, but with the hyper-materialist spin on it. So this is kind of like religion for atheists. So when you want to look at it that way.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I think technology would have to be in a very different place. I think you'd need very different kind of computing, because I think the analogies we were making to the audio world were very spot on. I mean, especially even this was 13 years ago. Digital anything 13 years ago sounded like crap. The cameras weren't even that very good yet. Digital cameras yet. Like, they've come a long way. Again, things just are getting better and better because they can make things smaller and smaller. But I'll tell you something, you can shoot great digital films now. I mean, obviously Hollywood is doing it all the time. But if you A/B'd that directly to a full 35 millimeter print, which is how things used to be done, still, no, it's the 35 millimeter looks better.
Way better. And
deeper.
On movies too, shot on film looks way better. Even 16 millimeter, but 35 millimeter film or 72 millimeter film, oh my God, there's nothing like it. 4K, 8K, it doesn't matter.
Well, here's the
nothing
thing:
has the depth
when they're
and
taking
the
those old
contrast.
movies, older movies, I should say, if they were shot on good film, the reason why they can remaster them today digitally, when they say remaster, what they're doing is taking the
Shooting
best
it on a projector,
copy.
yeah.
Well, they're taking that 35 millimeter print, whatever the best they can get, master copy they can get, and they're doing an 8K scan of it, pulling that much data out of it. Whereas, like, if it was shot on digital, for instance, which might be 2K to 4K, probably until more recently anyway, well, guess what? You can't really remaster that. It is what it is. So you can get a slightly older film that was shot on 35 millimeter that you can get an 8K print out of if you wanted to, because the data's there to get. But if you shot on digital, you shot on digital. Now, they're always coming up with algorithms to make things a little better, but it's not the same thing. It's just they're not. It's apples and oranges when it really comes down to it.
Yeah, you can infer some things in the gaps, like in those stair steps, as we were talking about. Then you try to smooth those out, right, by extrapolating the data in between them. But again, it's never going to be the same as an analogous, a true physical analog copy, ever. And then some when you're trying to go from real life again with just not just the organic material, but the spark of life. It can't be done. And I've watched this for a long time, and I've always been fascinated that this sci-fi world, scientism, whatever you want to call it, but also even kind of going into the dark occultic arts, with necromancy and that sort of thing, tends to see. I mean, to me, it looks like they're trying to get the ability, like Frankenstein, to create life outside the natural world, that create their own life, but they don't have the ability to make life. The same thing we saw with, quote, UFO or alien cattle mutilations. They're always taking the sex organs, the soft tissues, mucus, that sort of stuff that you would use if you were trying to build an artificial organism using existing materials. That's what you'd take. DNA samples. That's what you'd take. It does seem like they've been trying to make their own version of life.
That's exactly what it's about. When you go back to the old esoteric principles, you're talking about things like the golem, right? Yep. Or the homunculus.
Yep.
These are all the same kind of thing. This is just kind of putting a modern spin on that.
Exactly.
And like, it's the same thing.
Technological
in a
necromancy.
nutshell. Right. Yeah. It is. It's techno necromancy.
Well, here's the thing, though. Weren't those things like the Golem and all that? Weren't they organic? Like, weren't they
Golem
still?
Was not organic.
No, it was made
mud,
from clay.
Stone.
It was made of essentially stone
Clay.
or clay.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, the homunculus was organic materials, but even if you're talking about organic materials, all these things that they're talking about with transhumanism and stuff, they're using a lot of organic materials to try to do these things, make these emulations and stuff that.
I'm gonna copyright that techromancy.
Techromancy.
Techromancy. Yep.
Technomancy.
Whatever you want. My creation's life. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so they're not talking just like electronics and that kind of thing, that type of technology here. Transhumanism transcends that. It's all about manipulating biological material and stuff as well, because that's
turning
the thing.
You into the machine. Yeah.
Right. As much as they want to be God, they can't. They cannot create something from nothing. So they have to have materials to work with. So they're going to take whatever resources are available here to try to mold it into whatever they want, even if it's biological tissue, things like DNA, stuff like that. They want to try and work with this stuff and blend it with like the electronic type apparatus and build life that way, quote unquote life that way, or that kind of thing. But they're really missing out on the whole spiritual component of it, because they look at everything with this hyper materialist view. So in my view, I think there's definitely a spiritual component behind it as well, and this is creating a sort of gateway for something else to step in. And I think
exactly
that's
what Wayne and I talked about on. Yeah, and exactly what Wayne and I talked about on Sola Scriptura. I think it was episode 3 or 4, where we talked about the Genesis 6 experiment and what appeared to happen in the antediluvian pre-flood world. There was an incursion by some other beings who messed with DNA across the board, not just human, but all of life. And it, Scripture talks about Nephilim, as well as all the animals had been messed up, right?
Yeah.
And screwed up. So it's a fascinating story. If you're interested in that, it's on my channel, Sola Scriptura with Wayne McCroy. Look for the full episodes. The 0.5s are just me by myself. But I think it was episode 3 or 4 that we talked about that. So you can take a look at that.
Or it might be 3 and 4, actually.
Yeah, it could be. the way
we
re-roll, yes.
Yeah.
3, 4, 5, and 6.
Something like that.
But yeah, anyway, we spent a lot of time digging into that.
All right, so that's going to wind it down for us here. What do we think as far as the more modern computers, say as a supercomputer or these quantum computers? Maybe it could do a bit better at the reproduction to try and trick you into thinking it's real and can think, but I don't know. Even with the zillions of calculations those things can do, I'm having my doubts, because from the way I understand the way the human brain works, just me throwing a baseball to Wayne and him reaching out to catch it, the amount of computations that his brain just did were, from what I understand, quite staggering. Like, massive calculus had to be done even though he's not doing it consciously. Do you think that sounds about right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good comparison to make. The supercomputers and the quantum type computers, they could definitely do those types of calculations per se, but there's something that's kind of missing in that whole equation. It would probably not be as seamless as it is for people to do, because of various reasons. But the computational power is there, but it's not strictly about the computational power, and that's kind of one of those things where this gets tied up in the hyper materialist construct. And that's not what it's about. The brain and the human body does not function in the same way that a computer does.
Yep.
So it's not really about your calculation rates or how much calculations you can do per second or anything like that. It's a matter of just how it interacts with the environment. It has to do with energy fields, in my view, more so than just absolute straight up
morphic
physical
resonance
things.
And that sort of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think a computer could do that per se. Now, it could probably do like a good simulation of that kind of thing. I'm sure, like, that's why there's things like the Turing test, which actually has been passed by several computers now, where it can convince you that you're speaking to an actual person.
But really,
so
is that a
it's
bar?
good enough, but
Is that a bar of the computer, or really the discernment of the person?
that's the thing. It's all
I mean,
subjective. See, that's where it gets a little tricky, because when it comes down to it, it's all very subjective. So it's one of those things where, you could perceive this as that, but somebody who might not be as gullible or something might perceive it another way. Like, so it's very subjective, the Turing test. So somebody could sit and talk to a computer and think, yeah, that totally sounds like a person to me. But then somebody who might be a little bit more worldly minded or something could sit down and realize, hey, this is an algorithm talking to me, So it's, one of those things where it's a good enough simulation that most people,
yeah.
at a passing glance, would think it's a real thing. But
Well, that's where I kind of put those
dig a
together.
little deeper, you know.
Well, and that's why I kind of put those together again. That, as Jason said, much of it seems to be an attempt to fool us into believing that it is conscious, it is in some way sentient. And on the two sides of that, the technology has increased. On the other side, the majority of people have been dumbed down. I mean, again, look at what they're willing to believe when you see the crazy things even going on around us right now that are very clearly poppycock. I mean, they couldn't be more clear that they are lying, and yet people not only endorse it and back it up, but if you question it, again, you're a science denier. So those two
you're
things.
a racist.
Right, or a Nazi, right? So I did not see that coming. And so the inability of people to use good discernment is I think a key component to deception and the power of suggestion. So anyway.
Yeah, well, I think it was Voltaire that said, "He who could make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities."
Indeed.
There you go.
So that holds to be true. So, like, these people that are bought into this whole transhumanist ideology, and if they're bought in hardcore and they really believe all this stuff, like, I mean, this is a 130 some page document right here talking about this is the technical aspects of how we're going to do this and that and the other thing, and we'll emulate the brain, and at some point we'll be able to replace the brain with electronic components and transfer people's consciousness into a computer. If these people believe that absurdity, they will commit an atrocity to achieve that absurdity. And that's what the whole gist of this whole idea is. There's people that actually buy into this whole idea and this philosophy of transhumanism, and it's a very real thing that's rolling down the pike at us with these technologies and what these people believe, because they're looking at this from the strictly hyper materialist viewpoint. And in my view, that's a very dangerous position to be in, is to be caught in this hyper materialist paradigm, because there's a much broader and bigger spiritual world out there that this stuff has nothing good to do with, and it could only bring about bad things in the spiritual ramification of things, in my view. So that's why I'm out sounding the alarm bell about this whole transhumanist movement and everything that goes with it. Yeah, they're developing technologies that could legitimately help people. Yes, I get that. But this is the thing. When you start to read these papers and stuff and see this is what these people believe, this is what they want to do, this is what they're working towards, and they're just pushing aside any ethical concerns or spiritual concerns, all that kind of stuff, and pushing it forward with reckless abandon. This is the thing that's concerning. And this is the people that are basically running this whole kind of philosophy. And these are the ones that are getting the funding from the banksters. And this is what the elite, royal bloodline classes and stuff want. They want to achieve this quote unquote immortality. They want this digital immortality. They want this power, this control, this knowing that, this is where they're going to be and what they're going to do. They want immortality here on this physical plane, because here's the thing. If they don't achieve this, right, then if they look at things and realize there's a spiritual aspect to things, and I think some of them at the very top realize there's a spiritual aspect of things, they're answerable to their creator. They know that. They're trying to get out of that. That's why they're pushing so hard for this. Now, most of your scientists and stuff that are working on this stuff, they're bought into the hyper-materialist view, okay? But there are some of those at the topmost levels of the power structure. These would be your dark cultists and stuff like that. And these people, in some of these royal family bloodlines or whatever you want to call them. And these people know very well that they've done some spiritually wicked things and that they are answerable to a higher power. And they're doing everything that they could possibly do to avoid the consequence of that. And this is one of the ways they could do that, is by achieving this type of a digital immortality.
Sure.
But,
I think, from my perspective, Wayne, it's not just that some of them are, mildly aware that they've done some spiritually questionable things, but they're more aware of the spiritual reality by far than most people, because, again, they've convinced them of hyper materialism. So they're very aware, and they're using it to their benefit, is doing, spiritually, as you say, wicked things in order to maintain and keep power and control. But I think they're also, again, quite aware that there are consequences.
Right, and that's the thing. They want to try to avoid those consequences. But I think by and large what they don't realize is by doing this, they're creating their own consequences. Because think about it. Think about immortal existence in a digital mainframe somewhere. This would be...
Sounds like hell.
Yeah, exactly. They're building their own hell, and they don't see it. They see this as their only way forward to be, so that they don't have to answer to a creator. But guess what? They're building their own prison system.
I believe that many of them are themselves deceived.
Right.
Greatly deceived.
Indeed.
Yep.
All right,
kids,
gentlemen.
I got to run. Yeah.
Let's wind her down here. Anything you want to mention before we end this, Baldini?
Well, just join Rose 777 and I tomorrow morning for the Poppycock Report, as always. That's 6 a.m. Pacific and 9 a.m. on the East Coast. Tuesdays and Thursday mornings for the Poppycock Report. And then, again, you can check my channel, Unintended Consequences, for all those goodies happening on the weekend. Oh, and I'll be at Flattoberfest as well. Just booked all that stuff last night. So, miracle of miracles, I'm going to show up and make coffee.
Awesome sauce.
Sweet.
I love it.
I'll be your barista. I'm your Huckleberry. So there you go.
Wayne, got anything you want to mention?
I'm just going to mention my new book should be out very soon. Very nearly finished with it, so I should be putting the final touches on that within the next week or so, and trying to get it out to market.
Awesome sauce. All right, and join Crow 777 Radio in the morning for episode 256. We have a gentleman going by the pseudonym KL. This is probably my favorite show as far as the information being delivered. The things he goes into with the law, man, it is absolutely over the top insane. The whole 2 hours is just information packed. I can't even say enough good stuff about it.
A gravy fest.
It absolutely is. It's the culmination of what we've been working on with the Law series. This guy's got it. He's an older gentleman. Really knows what he's talking about. We'll talk about it more after it's released, but please check that one out. If you've ever been thinking about checking out Crow 777 Radio, 256 is the one to finally go, I think I'll listen to this one. But all right, that's going to do it. We're way over time from what we usually do here because of our great visit by our friend Steve. So we'll see you guys soon. Thank you so much for being here.
Kooky, take care.
to see. Will speak, manifest beside me, my angel, for all to see. Will speak, manifest beside me, my angel, for all to see, manifest beside me, my angel, the universe will speak, manifest beside me, my angel, for all to see.